Marcus Martin. When you see Walter Rodney, ask him, oh, you know hear about how we laughing. So when the little offspring asking, tell them they never told us that black is beautiful. They never told us black is beauty. They never told us that black is beautiful.
Welcome everyone to our first SUSO event of 2021, and also in partnership with our good partners and friends from Global Black Youth. I'm really excited today to talk about the history, or some of our history on Black History Month, and I clearly have some things to share about my own personal kind of background, which I've been discovering and most recently discovered this week with terms of my ancestry roots. So for today's agenda, we're going to run through just a quick overview of kind of SUSO, Speak Up, Speak Out, and our agenda for 2021. GBY will also do 5 minutes on their kind of agenda for 2021. I'll share my DNA results and where I'm actually from, which is all new to me. We have some great speakers who I've met prior to today as we prepped, who's going to give you some really phenomenal insight into some of our history and how things have come about. And then we'll have some Q&A and hopefully keep this really interactive and engaging as we always do. So yeah, so just kick it off with you know, me personally, I'm a big fan of history, and I've really started to learn to appreciate it probably as I got older, and I've got to appreciate more just the different aspects of my genetics and what makes me, what, you know, my makeup and how I think and tick. And it's really interesting to actually put that to my DNA and understand things more. I've been very cynical about some of this, so I appreciate that not everyone here believes in the evolution. Some may believe in Big Bang Theory. So what we're going to talk about today is not necessarily trying to brainwash you into our way of thinking, but I have found that the DNA does ring true to some of the history that I know of for myself anyway. So just quickly to remind you about what we're trying to do at SUSO and what we're trying to achieve. Firstly, we're trying to continue the conversation, right? So many people became more aware or awake last year around the May-June time with some of the incidents that happened. And, you know, we have a lot of people that are willing to be vulnerable and learn more about kind of, you know, the differences in Black culture and how Black cultures feels that, you know, we've been treated in corporate and other situations for many years. And a lot of this is really about the kind of inclusion and education, which is the second aspect of how we kind of move forward. We move forward together. A big thing for us is really the wealth gap and solving some of the Black inequity, as I refer to it, and how do we actually deal with that? For me and for some of the people around me, I think we have a belief that we can help to solve some of that over a longer period of time and generations to come, by sponsoring, supporting, and helping entrepreneurs to become owners of future successful big companies. Two of our main goals for 2021, and where we're going to need some help from you, is firstly on the mentoring side. For us, we're going to be looking for corporates and some of you to become mentors, either to people who are starting out their careers and they need to figure out how to transition into corporate. A lot of the people that I know, and particularly from my own background, transition to corporate was a super hard thing for me to do, just because of the different culture and the trust and the lack of trust and not knowing. It was very difficult. So not having people like me who I could turn to ask questions was made it things, I think, a little bit harder. So having mentors when you first enter corporate from some of the environments we come from, I think is really important. The second part is that we also have a lot of talented people who for in the Black community and in the workforce that have felt marginalized throughout the times in their career, and that's led to them being demotivated or not being considered for opportunities. And part of what the mentoring program is looking to do is to really reinvigorate that mid-level management within organizations and help prepare them to move forward and also upward within their organizations, or move onward into their respective career paths that makes them happy and more successful. The second major thing that we were looking to kick off next month, so in partnership with GBY, is our Entrepreneurs Club, which is really an environment where we bring entrepreneurs together to share ideas, to pitch ideas, and to get feedback, and also potentially seek investors in what I'd consider to be a safe environment where you can be yourselves. And the goal is really just to try and help similar-minded people to be successful. And hopefully as that network grows in success, it grows in size too. So that's the focus for SUSO. One is the mentoring program, and two is the Entrepreneurs Club. And with that, I'm going to hand over to Niisha from GBY to talk a little bit about their horizon for 2021.
Thank you very much, Steve. Good afternoon to all of you. We are delighted to partner again with Speak Up, Speak Out. And our first partnership and collaboration was last December, as we put together the Global Black Youth Fest on December 11 and 12 that gathered over 2,000 young Black leaders globally. And by globally, I mean as far as Australia, New Zealand, with Black Iranians and not just from the diaspora, but also from the continent. Like Dr. Ashimembe likes to call it, the universality of Africanness. So Global Black Youth was formed because both my co-founder and I, and obviously other people, were not the only one who think that way, realized that there's a very large ecosystem of young Black disruptors, innovators, entrepreneurs who are being completely underutilized, underappreciated, and underserved. But there was also a lack of a global community that connects them to each other. So one of the main things that Global Black Youth does is really to foster a global ecosystem of young Black entrepreneurs and innovators, and connect them not just to each other, but also to opportunities, to houses of knowledge, to resources, establish a pipeline or expand a pipeline where it does exist, of knowledge, of resources, of opportunities to young Black founders. So we like to think about young Black people, and as they are, move away from a deficiency model to more of an asset-based approach, to think of them as you know, reflect what they are, move away from the dominant narrative of delinquency, of the negative dominant narrative, and really highlight the positive contributions and everything that they're doing, the unattainable knowledge they're producing to our most pressing global challenges, and that is completely being missed out. So the main goal of Global Black Youth is really to connect, amplify, and invest into the reach and impact of the most cutting edge, I don't like to use that word after I spoke to a friend who's in this call right now, but cutting edge solutions and knowledge being produced by Global Black disruptors, entrepreneurs, innovators. I would like to, and we would like to, most importantly, disrupt the 4% and the 10% and the 6% that you see of knowledge, of capital, of investment that's been poured into, infused into young Black founders. We're tired of these numbers and we really want to increase them. Some of our events that I'll let my co-founder delve more into, and involves, like Steve said, the creation of the Black Entrepreneurs Club that's going to kick off next month. So I invite many of you to take part. We're really going to make sure that we have representation from all over the world. And when we think about a global community, like I said, we want to make sure that we have the Pacific, we have Asia, we have the whole continent, what I like to call Western Asia rather than the Middle East and the Americas. We also try to hold conversations around what's missing. For example, establish a a Latin American hub, like innovation hub, that's really going to foster an ecosystem of Black and Indigenous entrepreneurs in the region. We're holding a conversation coming up soon together with Inca Ventures on diversity in the VC sector in Latin America, really, bringing to the fore what is it that we're missing out by not investing into young Black entrepreneurs in the region. With that, I'd like to give it to my co-founder, my fantastic Nieleti Honwana from Mozambique. So thank you.
Thanks, Nusha, and thanks, Steve. It's so exciting to be here with all of you for SUSO and GBY's second collaboration, but first one of 2021. So this is really great, and I think it's so apropos that we're all coming together in sort of Black History Month here in the US. And there are Black History Months now almost every month, everywhere in the world. And I think part of what we want to do with this conversation is, as Nusha outlined, what Global Black Youth is trying to do is change those dominant narratives about young Black people, right? What are their contributions? Where are they innovating? How are they changing the status quo, not only for themselves, their communities, their societies, but for the major challenges that the world is facing. But what we know is that this is not new, right? Historically, we've seen Black people innovating, contributing to their societies, to their communities for generations. We built so much of the world that we inhabit today, and so often those narratives, those stories, those histories are ignored, erased, and are not told. And so we present Black history as world history. We present Black history as current history. And we, or at least I, let me not speak for everybody, would put forth that Black history is not just a month, right? And so these are conversations that we start in a particular month because of the opportunity, but that we should and will continue throughout 2021 and beyond. And so I just wanted to, just piggyback off of what Nusha said, and thanks so much, Steve, for sort of reminding us to also talk about what we're going to be focusing on in 2021, following our fest that really brought together this diverse array of the Black diaspora that allowed us to communicate and engage with the parts of the Black diaspora that are so often forgotten or so often left out of conversations around sort of the universality of Africanness that we love from our good friend Achille Mbembe. We're really trying to make sure that as we continue our programming, that we're creating platforms that are inclusive of these other diasporas, of these other experiences. And so the first thing we'll be rolling out in 2021 is a pilot program that we're calling Ashe, which is a platform where we'll be connecting young Black freelancers and creatives from around the world to job opportunities, to workshop opportunities and mentorship that'll take place both sort of through South-South collaborations, but also from the Global South and Global North, again, just to showcase the pool of talent that exists and that is entering this, I guess, no longer burgeoning, but really growing and strong freelancer economy that exists globally. So we'll be sending out information about that initiative along with a number of others. But what we'd love to do is to continue to engage with you all and speak to you all in these kinds of fora, and definitely in our Global Black Youth and SUSO Global Entrepreneurs Collaborative. So with that, I'm gonna stop speaking, hand it over back to Steve and to our fantastic panel. We're so excited to sort of be able to bring together the UK experience, the American experience, the Brazilian experience of Black history, and learn just a little bit more about what we've been doing and how phenomenal we are. So thanks, guys. Steve, I'll send it back to you.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Team GBY. So what many of you have all been waiting for, the final, where am I really from? So the makeup is that 84.7% sub-Saharan African, 14.6% European, and the big surprise is that 4% Ashkenazi Jewish. So I always knew there was a bit of Jewish in me, to be quite honest. So I've often referred to myself inappropriately as a Black Russian Jew for my love of vodka as well as For some reason, I've always been sure that I've been Jewish, so it's now confirmed. Of the African breakdown, again, I've probably known and been convinced 49% is Nigerian, which is kind of my most dominant trait. And then the other 24% is a combination of Ghanaian, Liberian, and Sierra Leone. Then there's another 6.3%, which is Angolan and Congolese. So some Southeastern African side there. And then in Europe, it's broadly British and Irish, with a little bit of Scandinavian. So that's my makeup. What I found, so what was quite interesting, which now makes me somewhat, believe even more in the DNA test or DNI test, is that it actually drew me back to the place in Jamaica where I know my family's from, which is St. Catherine's, Jamaica, which is St. Catherine's in Jamaica, which is where my mum grew up, and my dad actually as well. It also has traces of St. Andrew's Parish, Portland Parish, St. Elizabeth, Clarendon, St. Mary's Parish, and Westmoreland. So, and again, obviously, there's lineage to the slave, where people were taken from within those countries, Africa, going back to Jamaica when they started the slave trade. So just a couple of other, so there's a lot for me to dig into. Obviously, I'm going to try and find what part of Nigeria I'm from, and which tribe I belong to. So more to come there as I dig into some of this more. What's really cool is that I have links to the Neanderthals, which is an extinct species of humans, which is kind of funny. So now my wife is calling me a caveman all the time. I also share an ancient lineage with Pharaoh Ramses, which is the original, they say the original rulers of the ancient Egyptian empire. So I always knew that there was some king in me somewhere. But anyway, as we stop shaking your head, Neil. As we move into the agenda and you get to speak to so get to the more interesting topic, I'm gonna let Faida Jailer, founder at Freedom Is Mine, Isaiah R. Hall from National Urban League, Director of Compliance and Programmatic Oversight, and Jessica Sandin, People Director at Nubank's FinTech Unicorn in Latin America. So we've got a nice, diverse group here for you today in terms of geography to take you through some thoughts. So if we could kick off with Faida in terms of, just introduce yourself, a little bit about you, how you got here.
Sure, thanks, Steve. Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me. So my name's Faida. I'm joining you from London, UK, as you can hear by my accent. And I am the founder of a digital platform called Freedom Is Mine, which started out as a YouTube channel. And in a nutshell, I started making YouTube videos where I went by country and talked about the history and the culture of the African diaspora in that country. And the platform has kind of extended out across the social media platforms. And so I basically teach people about Black history across Europe, the Americas, Asia, the Middle East, the Pacific. So yeah, that's me.
Awesome. And now moving over to you, Isaiah.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Good afternoon from Brooklyn. And good day to you all. I'm Isaiah Hall, Director of Compliance and Programmatic Oversight at the National Urban League, which is a 112-year organization that has been around in America, consulting firm out here in New York that just helps with nonprofit organizations be able to be sustainable and be viable and effective with their missions and organizations. And so do that. And I am a poet. I'm a writer and poet. So, all those things, I guess, help lead and be able to allow me to be able to articulate my story, as a Black man in this world, but as a Black man in America.
Yes, Jessica, finally, Jessica.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you so much for having me. I'm Jessica Sending. I'm People and Culture Director at Nubank, the largest and more important fintech unicorn here in Latin America, based in Brazil. I'm Brazilian from Sao Paulo, but right now I'm a little bit up at the Ecuador line, spending some time in Bahia, the Axé land in Brazil. And I'm very proud and very happy to be part of this amazing panel today. Thank you so much, Niusha, for the invitation.
Fantastic. So the first question I have is, and this one's going to go to all three of you. What inspired you to get into the profession that you're now in? And we'll start with Faida.
I wouldn't even necessarily call it a profession, because I kind of do this as a hobby, really. It's a passion of mine. But I was inspired because before this, and pre-pandemic, I'd like to add, I was curating and hosting Black History tours in Latin America, predominantly in Colombia and Peru, but other places as well. And when that kind of got put on hold because of the pandemic, then I was interested in, I still wanted to teach Black history and introduce people to Afro-descendant communities. And I thought, how can I do that in a way that is, accessible to people and interesting? And the more research I did about Black and Afro-descendant communities across, all the continents of the world, I was like, wow, like I had no idea about all of these communities and this history. And so I decided to bring it together and to create YouTube videos, literally. And so I get viewers from all over the world. And, they can learn about Black history that maybe they aren't necessarily taught in school.
And what's your most recent one?
Most recent one, Argentina, I think. African diaspora in Argentina. Next one is Philippines. Keep an eye out for it.
I can't wait for that. I've got some good friends who are Philippine. Isaiah.
You mind if I just defer first before, I'd rather give it to the ladies first before I begin.
Showing me up. Okay, brother. Over to you, Jessica.
Well, thank you. I guess I never knew what I want to be when I grew up, but I knew what I didn't want to be. So I started like in the professional world by necessity. I needed to start working to pay for my education when I was younger. But I was always fascinated by the corporate world and all the sophistication and coolness in the corporate world, although it was not built for us. But like I got into that enchantment and I knew that I want to be there. I didn't know doing what, but I knew that I want to be there. So I started making a lot of internships in many, many areas and doing like my cut list by what I didn't want, what I didn't like. But I always knew that I wanted to be in connection with people, hearing people's stories and building connections to support each other. And this is when in my last internship at the university, I landed in HR and I loved it. So I've been more than 10 years in HR right now. And I learned that I can be as impactful, as supportive, as inspirational, and as challenging as I can in the corporate world once I understand who I am and what I'm here for. So I'm very happy to be able to be provoking this change in the corporate world, representing ourselves and representing my values over there too.
Awesome.
I'm not showing you up, man. So don't. It's all love, Steven. I know you don't mean I don't got love for you, man.
It's too late. No, it's all good.
Sure. I guess
your inspiration was, please.
My inspiration, I guess, in as it relates to what got me into the National Urban League was honestly, it was by chance, right? It was one of my best friends had interned there, and I'll be honest with you, I was just enjoying being a college student. I wasn't really thinking about my future then at the time. I mean, I was, but I wasn't, right? And so she told me about this internship that I needed to be able to join up, and was with the National Urban League, and I've kind of heard about it, but never really quite knew too much about it here stateside, and it completely blew my mind. I never knew that there a prominent African national organization run by African Americans that had the connection to all of the major Fortune 500 companies who are supporters to our board, and is a nonprofit organization, meaning it's and I'm sure we provide services than an exact product or so, and so, but it being have the effect in this and run like a corporate structure, but really being about helping those from marginalized communities and things like that. And so that completely changed my my whole perspective. And then I got into went to grad school for for business, got my MBA, and there was more of because we were in a recession in America, there was more of a calling for me to kind of just stay in social service. So I worked as worked for in politics, local politics in New York as a speechwriter, senior community liaison. Got the elected official to get reelected, and then did some work after that and returned back to the Urban League. And so my story has been there from being an intern to running running the compliance division, which is a critical part of how we do and how do we really effectively distribute and decide which affiliates be able to get funding for our programs, and who are in the best state to be effective to serve those communities. We serve over 300 communities nationwide, operating in 36 states, and there's 90 Urban League affiliates. And so it's critical, the work that me and my team that we do in regards to managing relationships with those affiliate CEO leaders and their board chairs, and make sure that they are operating effectively and really helping out organizations, people who look like you and I.
Awesome. And just staying with you, Isaiah. So, do you think that our history can alter our future?
Absolutely, man. And absolutely no, it does. I believe there is a African proverb, or symbol called Sankofa, right? We can't, and the symbol is of a bird looking behind itself, right? And I believe the meaning is, we really can't know where we're going unless we know where we've been. And even furthermore, I truly believe that who we are, as a people across the diaspora, right? There's a universal language to our Blackness, free from the ties of country, language and religion, and built in the fabric of our common struggle, heritage, and resiliency. So, it's so fitting that we have a conversation about, Black history, right? And even, me thinking and growing up and the education that we did learn, and, how it went from Black history being in the scope of, it being American history. And then when you think of the more we learn and know and gain knowledge, and I think that's part of the separation or the divide of, Americans here from Africa, right? There's a way, we don't know that part of our history and our heritage and our ancestry has been robbed of us, right? And so, but I think that in that the same beauty about that, when we have these type of discussions, when we, when we are talking about, the different things that make up our history, right? And the similarities and some of our stories or in our leaders, right? Those things really let us know that we are way more connected to each other than we think, regardless of the distance and country and nationality.
That's cool. And look, I think many of us are still learning, and this, you three have a lot of great insight into the history But just switching over to Jessica, who is in Brazil, I think for many in the UK and the US, we wouldn't really know that Brazil has the biggest Black population in the world outside of the African continent, right? So I think it'd be interesting for you to maybe share some history and insight into kind of the Brazil population in terms of what have you experienced? What's the history behind Brazil and how people ended up in Brazil and how's it all kind of come to this point?
Sure. And we here in Brazil, we are the largest territory in Latin America. We speak Portuguese. We don't speak Spanish, although we fake that we can understand and we can speak Spanish, but we don't. So and here we have the largest Black population outside of the continent, outside of Africa. So we are the largest diaspora in the world. Our composition here is around 53 to 54% of Black and brown self-identified in Brazil, citizens in Brazil, and it would be around 100 million people. Of course, here in Brazil, we have a lot of work to do in terms of racial education. Here in Brazil, in the census, we are the ones that identify ourselves either Black, brown, or indigenous or white. But we know that because of our composition and our history, there is a lot mixed here. So I think this would be a step that I would connect to what Isaiah said. It's here in Brazil, we are in a very important moment to rescue our real history and understand where we came from and what brought us here and what made our composition the way we are right now. Because Brazil has like a beautiful story in the books about how mixed we are and how racism doesn't exist here, because we see Black and brown mixed people everywhere, but we are not everywhere. And I think here in Brazil, the agenda right now, it's not only about representativity, but it's about proportionality. Because if we consider that we are more than half of the population and we look at certain spaces and we are less than 10%, and then we look at the other spaces and we are more than 70%. For instance, in the academia world, in the judge world, in the law world, in the innovation science world, our compositions, depending on the state, is around 10%, 15%. But when we go to maternity mortality, when we go to incarcerated people, our composition, our representative there is over 60%. So something is wrong. When we go to the areas that are not privileged or supported with health, education, and the minimal dignity, our composition is way much more than the 50% of our proportionality here. When we go to the other side, it's way less than 20%. So just a little bit of context here on how things are disproportional in terms of representativity, and we are not settling for representativity anymore. We are now looking for proportionality and democratization of access. We don't want to have a unique or a single story of inspiration in different environments, but we want to have a solid presence as a community in all the environments that we want to be.
It's kind of so interesting for me in that, unlike the US and the UK, where we tend to be the minority, we tend to be a minority in population. In Brazil, you're actually the majority, and you still have the same challenges that are encountered with a minority population. So Faida, you as a teacher, kick us some knowledge on things that you're teaching people, but that's not necessarily widely available to others.
It's such a wide question. I think one of the things that strikes me is that when we think of the African diaspora, we think of Black history, we tend to focus on specific regions and focus on those narratives. And people are usually quite surprised to learn about Black history across other places in other countries that they wouldn't necessarily associate with Black communities or Black history. And I'm thinking, like Japan, Russia, Peru, Greece. When people think of people think of those countries, they don't necessarily think of Black communities. And for that reason, as Nialeti said at the beginning, they don't think of Black contribution. And that's what's so important to shine a light on. And I'm trying to think, like, you know, maybe you've heard of, for example, Yasuke, who was the African samurai in Japan in the 1600s. Or, for example, the Afro-Bolivian community today has its own king. His name is Julio Pinedo, and he is the king of the Afro-Bolivian community, and his father was before him, and his father was before him. You know, I've got so many random facts that I could just sprout about Black history and Black communities. You know, kings, resistance leaders, saints, musicians, spies, so many interesting stories that are completely overlooked from all around the world. And so when we think of Black communities and Black history and Black culture, I think what I would like my contribution to be is to challenge people's ideas of what that looks like or what that sounds like, which is why I really encourage people to I mean, even Nialeti, like, who's of Iranian, Afro-Iranian descent, there are people that don't know that there is a Black population in Iran. And so it's like things like that that kind of frustrate me but exhilarate me at the same time, because then I'm like, okay, this is where we start. Like, this is how we can start to build upon these narratives.
Incredible.
It's amazing. It's really, really interesting. So I hope you've got a good number of followers on your YouTube channel after that, because it sounds like I want to find out the spies in particular. Now, you know, when I think about kind of my own kind of upbringing, and you know, I think, you know, we were led to be so insular and proud of where you were actually born or who you were born to, first generation, that you end up just, you know, I think I've missed out on so much knowledge, and it's a shame that you don't get taught some of this history in schools. But but so for me, I'm always now kind of looking to try and just learn more and more about, you know, kind of where I come from and my history. But you know, there's a few lessons for me around if I could have started earlier, how much better off I'd be. So question for starting with you, Faida, is what would you, knowing what you know now about your culture and your history, what would you tell your younger self?
Oh, good question. What would I tell my younger self? I think I would encourage my younger self, because at school, I mean, obviously we both went through the British schooling system. We're not taught these stories. And I think I would challenge my younger self to ask myself, what am I not being told? What am I not being taught about history? Where can I fill in the gaps for myself? Because it wasn't really until I started to do my own research that I was able to learn, you know, about these Black communities and Black heroes all around the world. And so I think I would encourage my younger self to question what is not being said and try and read between the lines.
You know what's funny, as you say that, I remember, like, in history, I did a whole term on American medicine while in England. And the term is a semester, right? So it's just funny how you get taught things that may have no almost relevance to you or your history, your background in some of the schools we go to. What about you? What about you, Jessica? What would you tell your younger self?
Yeah, I think I would say the same of Faida in a more like direct way, maybe, that is like, don't believe in everything that you read on the books, like because the books are really white here in Brazil. But I would also say, don't spend your energy trying to fit in a world that was not built for you, because like I struggle, as most of us in our young and child and teenager times, we struggle to fit in, to be valued and acknowledged and respected and invited in certain spaces and environments and groups. And we all like now we know why we were not fitting in. And right now I think like the next generation is growing with such a privilege of having a different environment in some spaces that tell them the opposite. And right now we have the power to build our own environments. And that's, I think it's one of the most powerful things that this kind of knowledge that Faida is sharing with us empowers us to shift the history forward. That is like, we don't need to squeeze ourselves or dim our light or even change our light to fit in certain environments and groups, but we can create our own environments and groups. And that's good enough. That's great enough. So I would tell this to my younger self.
And Isaiah, you got any messages for young Isaiah?
Well, first off, I want to just point out that I was trying to be chivalrous earlier and saying, let these women go before me. We're gonna have to rearrange this whole order, but it's it's been brilliant just hearing. I've been taking notes the same way I know that you have, Stephen, in regards to in regards to everything that's been said by these beautiful minds and beautiful souls that I'm fortunate enough to be on the panel with. But I think I'm just going to touch and agree with many of the things that have been said. I think for myself, the importance of, and the power of affirmations, right? The things that, and obviously a younger Isaiah didn't know what the word affirmations mean, but the things that we tell ourselves in regards to the things we believe in who we are, right? That and trusting your dopeness, right? Trusting who you are and the importance of that. I think, growing up, and I think all of us, whether we've all had to deal with social settings and being comfortable in our own skin and we think so much of our younger time is trying to fit in, right? And even when we think about, and it's placated with us as adults, right? Trying to find a seat at that table. But it's like, like, I'm going to create my own table. I'm going to make my own lane, right? I'm going to rest in and ensure who I am, right? Like, and I know that's difficult, and that's even that very much so the challenge for these generation of eventual young leaders, eventual people who will impact and affect the world, even after in the next generation and so on and so forth. They're being exposed to so much, as it was mentioned, technology that we didn't have to worry about and deal with that to a certain degree. But even in the midst of all of that, understanding the importance of trusting your dopeness, who you are, trusting and believing of who, of the things that you know about yourself, right? And not feeling like you have to be anybody different than who you are to make an impact on be sure, So that's what I'm saying.
The three of you sound like you're coming from royal blood. So you sound like kings and queens. So I think just like me, you must have some kings and queens blood in you. So and I think that's what I'd actually tell my younger self is that, hey, you are a king. So act like a king, act like but you doubt yourself so much when you have all of these. It's in your DNA. It's in our DNA once we believe it, which is kind of cool. So just moving over to Faida, what advice would you give to non-Black people to help change the future?
This is a great question. I guess my perspective is kind of maybe slightly different in that I'm mixed race, I'm mixed heritage. So my family's half white British, half Black African from the Congo, Democratic Republic of the Congo. And so sometimes I'm having these
cousins.
What's that? Sorry? Yeah, we are.
Cousins. Let me go to my list quickly. I think there might be cousins somewhere.
Exactly.
Like 10th generation cousins.
Yeah,
somewhere.
who knows?
So keep going.
So we have these conversations within our own household where, I'm trying to say, listen, but it's kind of taught me to, I guess, articulate myself in a way that doesn't, maybe trying not to alienate people or put them on the defensive, but just to say, listen, and don't speak over people or try and justify things or, come up with, this is not about blaming. This is about having a conversation and establishing a dialogue, and we don't have to agree on everything. But I would just like you to listen and to listen to people of color. So I think so the question was, how can people who are not of color, what can they do to help? And I think to listen and also to create space to to amplify these narratives. So if you have a platform or you have an opportunity, then to, you know, give over your seat at the table for a moment to someone else to be able to share their story.
Awesome. Isaiah, I'm going to save you by letting you go next.
Can you repeat the question for me again one more time, brother?
I was just saying, what advice would you give to non-Black people to help change the future?
I think that it is, you know, I'm a man of quotes. I'm a man of words. That is just in my DNA. And so there's a Chinese proverb that says that, you know, in order to understand the people, you know, you must first reach your neighbor, right? And so in that regards, you know, the importance of allyship, in regards to our understanding, you know, the story, our story, right? And how complex and how diverse that is. And that's why it's important to understand, you know, why I'm always interested and aware of, you know, saying the, you know, diaspora, right? You know, the full spectrum of the diaspora, because even in America, right, our you know, the civil rights movement, those things are, you know, very real, very historic, and, you know, very revolutionary. Also, when you think everything that, you know, Africans and, you know, African slaves have ascended to, from, you know, being brought over, as going from being seen as not even property, right? Not even human, but as property, right? To the highest level, you know, of our nation, right? And so, in a matter of less than 300 years, you know, or since slavery was eradicated, right? You know, I mean, we haven't been in all full spectrum of that, right? And so, I say all that to say, you know, allyship is so important. You know, we need to be fierce champions of the missions and the cause that we, you know, we feel so passionate about. We need to be accountable to ourselves in regards to being able to know our history, good, bad, and the ugly, right? In the full scope of that, and that, and also understand that, you know, allyship is critical, because there are people who, you know, who can be able to advocate and speak on our behalf in places and spaces that we can't necessarily be at. And in that allyship, you know, the importance of empathy, right? Empathy in regards, because empathy allows you to be without being able to have that experience of knowing what it is to be like Black in America or Black in any other place in the world. But because of who you identify with me as a human being, as a person, you know, you can empathize with that, and you can be an advocate and a champion for, you know, for the things that I feel strongly about, and vice versa, right? You know, that comes with being an ally to other plights, right, and other people who are disenfranchised, who are marginalized as well, and having empathy in that also, right, and showing up in those places, and not just only feeling, you know, the need to just champion yours when it suits you, right, or when it suits your cause. So
cool. A lot of knowledge there for people to take in, particularly this audience of friends and family and network. So I'm going to flip the script a little bit. So in terms of last question, but before doing that, Neil just sent something in the chat. If you've got any questions for the panel, we're going to try and wrap up in a few to give you a little bit of time to maybe get a couple of questions in. So please just let us know through the chat, and then we'll then unmute yourselves and come into the conversation. So the last question is really just flipping the script on the last question a little bit. What would you say? What would you tell Black talent who's aspiring to be successful in the corporate in a corporation or corporate? And Jessica, I'll flip to you.
Cool. And thank you for sparing me the white people question, because I really want to focus our energy and time in ourselves, because like I have no time for them. But I would say, I would quote Emicida, that is an amazing poet, slammer, rapper here in Brazil, and he has a Netflix show that you definitely need to watch. He says, all we have is us. Tudo que nós tem é nós. So focus in ourselves. Don't spend your time and energy again trying to be somebody else, but focus your time and energy figuring out who you are in this world and what is your purpose in this world, and being together to your own people. I think like maybe the acts of this strategy of the colonizers, I don't know the word in English, sorry.
Colonizers.
Thank you. The colonizer guys were like to separate us, to blend us. And right now, our strategy needs to be regroup and support each other. So I would say seek for support in ourselves. I think all of us here are offering ourselves out for support, for mentoring, for sponsorship. And if you are already recognized as an expert, as a leader or as a reference in your area, be intentional in supporting your own people. We have a lot of time, energy, and wisdom and opportunities robbed from us to catch up. So don't waste your time on what doesn't matter, on what they say that we need to be focused, but be focused to finding your own self among your own people. We see ourselves in each other. That's why they try so hard to separate us, but we need to be intentional on regroup and finding ourselves in each other. We learn, we see, we hear our history, and we learn and identify our potentials in each other when we are together. So let's be intentional on regroup, catching up on this time and everything that was robbed from us, supporting each other and setting the path, opening doors intentionally to our own people.
Very, 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 very true to the point. So with Neil, I don't know if you've got any questions coming in. If not, I'd maybe just plug for 2 minutes.
We've got one.
The next session. We've got one.
So what is the importance of connecting the diaspora to the continent, and what do we gain as a global community of Black people by connecting across borders? I guess it's what Jess was saying, right? It's the power of the collective.
I can, sorry, Isaiah, you're saying?
Go ahead.
No, I can share a little bit of my own story. I like this, my mind flipped the first time that I spent some time back in the continent. In 2016, I guess, I had the professional opportunity to have a short assignment in South Africa, and it spent like a little bit over than 2 months there. And just seeing a lot of people like me being proud, being loud, being themselves in different spaces, in different layers of the community, in different shades, colors, everything. It was like, whoa. And I'm speaking from a place where we are not a minority. So I think that this is, if I can say, a spiritual or an intuitional way to get back to our history or to recover our history. Like you said, Stephen, it's in our DNA. We don't need the books to say what we are and what we are not, but we need to walk intentionally in this path of self-knowledge and self-learning in untraditional way. And sometimes it's just in the air that you breathe. I was talking to Niusha, like here in Bahia, there is Black magic in the air. Every time that I'm here, I know that I'm back to my roots, because this is the place where the first enslaved African people set their foot here in Brazil. And this is the biggest community and the biggest recovery cultural community in Brazil. So I think that's it. Our mind, our spirit, our heart is pulling us back to our roots, to our history, without us knowing consciously. So I think like this journey to get back to Africa in different places, different moments, with different intentions, is part of this self-knowledge journey as well.
Powerful. So look, Neil, so firstly, I want to thank the panel for what has been an enlightening conversation, a truthful conversation, a real conversation about our history and even what we need to do. And, you know, it ranges from, you know, just following teachers like Faida, who are like, you know, sharing the good word about some of our, you know, some of our kind of exploits and the things you wouldn't typically know that aren't publicized. You know, we're talking about, you know, Isaiah's talked a lot about kind of, you know, really truly kind of getting to know yourself and push yourself. Jess has talked about creating a community, but I think what everyone's really said today, and we have to keep saying, is you don't need validation, right? Know your value and find your value and push for your value. And whether it's with allies or not allies, I don't know if you can do it all without allies, to be honest, but I don't think, you know, everyone falls in the same bucket, because, you know, history has changed people. And if you look at my DNA, I have some colonizer blood in me, right? Not necessarily by choice, but it's there. But, you know, so I think we're just in this amazing time where more and more people are aware and prepared to listen to what we have to say and some of the things we've had to challenge on. But I think it really comes from within, right? You know, we have to all find it from within and keep pushing to help each other, to make this a more fair and a more fair and equitable environment for everyone. So thanks everybody for participating, listening. Hopefully you can share some of this knowledge that you've gained today, and you're going to speak up and speak out. Isaiah, do you want to?
I want to just mention one thing. Thank you. First off, thanks again, Steve and everybody, for putting this together. Faida and Jessica, like I said, it's been a pleasure and an honor to be here with you, Queens. One thing you said about, we've all collectively said about the importance of not needing validation. Yes, which is true. But let's let that not be misguided. We can say of these things because of the work that we know that we've put in, right? The mastery that we have dedicated ourselves to our particular cause and things that we are passionate about, right? And so that's the reason why we can speak confidently on the things that I mean, you know, I don't want to assume, but I'm sure we, you know, just hearing the passion and everything that that's been shared from each and every one of us, that we can speak confidently in those manners because we put in the work in, right? Understanding what it takes, that dedication, that mastery, right? To doing what others are not doing because we believe and we love, you know, we believe in the importance of the work that we're doing, but the love of our people, right? And who we are as Black people across the board. So I just wanted to just say that, bro, and add that to what you were saying, man. And I appreciate your time and everything. I mean, I'm gonna let you go out here and close this out as you gracefully will.
No, I think we can close on that point. We're just going to let Neil cover like the next session, which I think is going to be another interesting topic to dig into.
Yeah, and for those of you who know Steve, there will be no space for him to talk about his royalty at the next session. So date for your diary is the 25th of March. We'll shortly start promoting that, but 25th of March, put in a save the date. 8th of March is International Women's Day, and we will be talking about the achievements of Black women, how those achievements are minimized and reduced to tokenism, and how women in senior positions still have this imposter syndrome, even though we think they've made it, and also how Black women in senior or prominent positions are portrayed negatively in the media. So one that you are not going to want to miss. Please come back and join us then.
So thank you all for your time, your participation, listening. Panelists, you've been amazing. I'm glad to get to know you, and now I can lean on you for some more knowledge and inspiration. Speak up, speak out.